Hey guys, in this video I'll show you how I created a modern version of the To-Do app using Figma, React, and Typescript. Check it out. So to create our React app project, we'll be using a framework called Create React App. And if we go to that website, createreactapp.dev, we'll see some instructions on how to do that. But for our case, we'll be building a React app with a TypeScript support. So I'll be searching for TypeScript here, adding TypeScript. So it says here TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript and compiles to plain JavaScript. And if we go to the link, basically it'll tell us, TypeScript validates that our code is working correctly. It basically checks for the data that we pass in, the shape of the data or the object that we are using, making sure that we're not passing something unexpected, and prevents errors while we're working on our app. So it's a nice thing to have while we're building our app. So we go back to adding TypeScript page, and in the installation process, it says here we just issue this command yarn create react app, and then the name of our app, and then template TypeScript. So we're going to do that, create yarn create react app, and the name of the app is going to be modern dash to do, and template is going to be TypeScript. So this is going to install the dependencies, Webpack, Babel, ESLint, and other stuff, and it's going to take a while to do all that process. So once this is done, we're gonna start working on building our components one by one. So now that our new React app has been installed through the Create React App framework, the next step is to change directory to the app that we just built. So change directory to modern-to-do, and then from here we can do yarn start. It's going to spin up a development server and launch our React app page. So I'm using Google Chrome as my default browser here, but if I copy this, go back to the previous window, and through the Firefox, I open up a new tab and paste this, close the other tabs, and there we go. So our development server is running, and our basic React app is installed. So if we change anything within source app.tsx and we save it, it's basically going to reflect on our page through hot reload. So let's say learn React hello, save, and there you go. It reflects the change that we just made, basically. So next step is for us to create the components folder within source and define our different components. So we're gonna do that right now. Create a new folder called components, and within here we're gonna define first the parent component to do. Next, we're going to define list navigation, footer. We have a footer, we have calendar, and we also have lastly the new item component. And we're also going to add within components, actually we're just going to define it here within the source folder, the interfaces.tsx, or just ts, since we're not going to be doing any JSX codes in here anyway. We're just gonna define our Typescript interfaces here, and that's gonna be used by the to-do component. So, and within each component folder, we're gonna define the files that we're gonna be working on, which is the index.tsx and also the index.scss, our CSS file with Sas Support, index.tsx Typescript file with JSX support. So we're gonna do that for the rest of the components. Index.tsx, index.scss, same for list navigation. Index.tsx, index.scss, index.tsx, index.scss, same for footer, tsx, index.scss. It's pretty manual. I mean, we can copy paste it, but I prefer making my components manually by hand. Last file is index.scss. Okay, so now that we have all our files completed within each component folder, next we're going to be creating our to-do component. We're just going to be adding basic code on this page just so we can start importing it on the app.tsx file. So we're going to import React from React, and we're going to define class to do, which extends react.component. So we're choosing class over functional component because we're going to be defining some states on this component, and also life cycle. We're gonna do component did mount, so and render method. So functional components, we can do that through effects and use side effects, but for this case, for our parent component, we're gonna just define a class because it's gonna be holding all the states. So class, and within here we're gonna be adding our constructor props. Our props is gonna be, let's say, passing an object super props. Okay, and now we define render, which returns, let's say, a div class name is equal to, the class name is going to be to do. Save this, and we're also at the end we're going to add export default to do, add a space. Okay, next we're going to import that file here in our app.tsx file. So import to do from /components /to do, and we're going to remove all of these things here, replace that with the to do component. Save that, and that reflects on our page. So now we have a basic structure. We have our parent component to do, and then the children components defined. Next step is we're going to build our children components one by one and define their features and styles, and then complete. Once that's complete, we're going to work on the parent component and bring them all into the parent component to finalize. Okay, so now we're ready to start working on our children components. And first up, we're going to start working on our calendar component, and we're going to define a functional component for this one. Like I said, we're going to use functions for these ones because we're not gonna define states and event handlers. Instead, we're gonna lift that up to the parent component, to the to-do component, and let this handle all of that. Define states, lifecycle methods, event handlers, and stuff like that. That way, this is going to be the single source of truth, and it will make our app cleaner, and prevents polluting our children components. So instead of defining all of those within the children components, it's much cleaner if we do it this way. So okay, so another thing that I did forget to add is Sas support. So for us to do that, we're gonna issue yarn add node Sas, and the version that I would like to install is 5. Currently there's version 6, but I think that is incompatible with the current version of Node that I'm using. So we're just going to install Node Sas version 5. So if we check package.json, we're going to see that here. So installed. Okay. So if we go back to our calendar child component, here we're going to define constant calendar. So first letter is capitalized because this is a component. Constant calendar variable is a function which returns div with a class name of calendar, and inside the body is just a string calendar, and we're gonna export default calendar this, and at the top we're gonna import its CSS or Sas file. Okay, and we are going to do this for the other components. Just gonna copy and replace these names to be quick. So calendar instead of calendar, we're going to rename this to footer. Replace all, save this, close this, list, it's the same thing, paste, search for calendar, and replace that with list. Okay, save, close. List navigation is the same thing, search for calendar, replace all instance with list navigation, save, close, and new items the same, copy paste, and search for calendar, replace that with new item, replace all, save. Okay, so now that we have our children components defined, and we have our calendar component, so if we refer to our Figma file, the design for this project, we can see here the calendar component is very similar to the Apple calendar app. Its design is just an icon. It's using rounded corners. The month name at the top and the date at the bottom. Minimal approach, just solid background color, blue tint, and that's it. So this is what we're going to be building. So we're just going to use the current date, to fetch the today's month and today's date. So before we do that, we're just so I can see that we're importing our calendar component. So we're just going to define that here. Import calendar from // so we can go up. So right now we are at to do. So if we want to go up one more, we're just going to define / and then calendar. So import calendar, and this calendar we can just pass that in here, and also get past to do. So if we save this, there you go. So our calendar has been added, and it's now its contents are being read. So now we're ready to start working on building this design. So let's do that. So for us to populate the month and the day or the date, we're going to define two constant variables. First one is now, which is a new date, so fetches today's or current date as of when it's read by the app. So, and then today is going to be, there's going to be two properties. There's going to be month and there's going to be the date. Okay, and for the month we're going to do now dot to locale string, and in here we're just going to pass right here. So there's some description about what it is. So string or array of locale strings that contain one or more languages, or one more language. If you include one more locale, this is sending. Okay, but in this case we're just gonna pass. If we search for this in MDN, this is what it is. It returns a string with a language sensitive representation of this date. So we can fetch the date and the month using this without, you know, defining our own array of months and, you know, all these manual work just to get our date. So this simplifies it. We can just use this method, and in here we can pass the language, and the next parameter we can pass an object, and in that object we can pass the key, which is month, and we want the month to be short. So so if we read this month is December, it's just going to be the three letters, the first three letters, DEC, January, JAN, etc., etc. Okay. And for the date, we're gonna pass again now and use the get date method. Okay. All right. So within here, we're gonna start building our calendar icon. So div class name equals calendar dash icon, and within that div class name equals calendar dash icon dash month, and in here we can pass in today dot today dot month, and below it it's going to be the date, today dot date. Okay, and right below it we're gonna pass in that label, this today string. So we're just gonna do div class name equals calendar dash label, the string today. Okay, say that. So there you go. So save it, and there you go. It reflects on our page May 11. So now we're just gonna start styling it. So for the calendar style file, index.scss, in here we can define calendar, which is this right here, the parent, and in here we're going to say display flex, and the flex direction is going to be row. so it's going to be on the left side. And then the next element is ampersand icon, so we can fetch that. So it's basically the ampersand is basically the same thing as calendar, so it's gonna be, it's like dot calendar the dash icon, so ampersand icon. And here we can just say text align center, text transform is uppercase, and text transform is uppercase. Yep, so we can simulate the first month is capitalized, and yeah, and then we're just gonna increase the font size for the other one. And here is within the icon we have children's month and date, so we can define month, below it percent date, and in month we can define the background dash color, which in this case is I think we can actually put a variable for that, so we can reuse that for later, because we're going to be using that same background color later for the border and the background color for the month, so we can just make a variable for that one right here. So icon color is going to be pound 3D 8 to EB, so that color right there, that tint or that tint of blue, that's the one that we want. Okay, so background color is going to be icon color, the one that we just defined. Padding is 3 pixel by 6 pixels. Border radius, so that it will be rounded corners. We're gonna pass, we just want the top right for this element for the month. So for the month element we just wanted it to be top left and top right, so it's gonna be the first one, this is top left, top right, and then 0 0 for bottom right and bottom left. And font weight is going to be bold. Font size is going to be 10 pixels. Color is going to be white, FFF. Okay. And for the date, we're going to do border dash bottom is going to be 2 pixels, solid. And again, use this variable that we created, so we don't define them or repeat ourselves. Simplifies things. So border dash left is going to be again 2 pixels, solid icon color, border dash right is 2 pixels, solid icon color. So what else? Border radius. So for this one it's going to be we're gonna do bottom right and bottom left, so we leave out this top left and top right. We don't put radius or rounded corners on that one. So 0 top left, 0 top right, 6 pixels bottom right, 6 pixels bottom left. Background color is white. Font size is 12 pixels and font weight is bold. Okay, and now outside of it, write like sibling of calendar icon is label. So outside of, so right next to it, adjacent to it is the label. And for label, we're gonna do font size 28 pixels. Margin is 0 0 0 20 pixels. So this is top right, bottom left, so that we can put some spacing between the icon and the text label. Margin 00, 20 pixels. Font weight is bold. And align the items to center and justify content to center. Okay, perfect. So there you go. So now that we have our calendar component with some styling to it, right? So next part is for us to work on the new item component, because this will let us work on adding stuffs to the list. But before we do that, we're gonna define different the states for the app, so that when you add a new item, it's gonna send that data to the parent component to do, and record that to the state and pass that down to the list. So that's the workflow. So so now we can close this down since we're done with the calendar. Next up is gonna be new item. All right, so now we're gonna work on the new item component, and before we do that, I just need to go back to the calendar style and add color icon color here, because if we refer to the Figma design, the date is actually blue instead of black, which is what we have right now. So I just need to add that, quick style, save it, and there you go. Okay, so close this, close that. Now we go back to the new item and we're ready to start working on this component. Before we do that, so again, we first need to define the interface that we'll need, that we're going to be passing to the to-do parent component. So interface.ts here, which is going to be within the source. So actually that's going to be outside. It's not a component. It's going to be within the source directory. And here, what we're going to do here is we're going to add export interface to do state. I just name it to do state because this is going to be all the properties, the data types that the to do component state's going to conform to. So in here we're going to pass items, which is an object. There's going to be completed property, and it's going to be string, otherwise undefined. It's an array of string. In progress, which is the same thing. So I can just copy, paste this, and remove. So there's going to be 3 properties within the items key, completed, in progress, and removed, which are all going to be arrays. Next up is going to be the new item, which is going to be a string, otherwise undefined, and view, which is going to be an object that will have properties open, which is a boolean, true or false, and selected, which is going to be string. So this is going to be the view, the current view that is selected. So if we refer to our design, so this shows the state of the app. If you click this, the list navigation component So there's going to be 3 views that will show. So either it's completed, which is this one on the right with the checkbox, and strike through text, in progress, which is the current one, this one, and removed. I don't have a design for the removed here, but it's going to be just a list of all of these items that you removed from in progress. If you click this button, it's just going to have the plus sign, so you can just click it again and those items will just come back to the in progress list or array. Okay, so going back to the code, so now we have the interface. The next thing, or the next part, is we're gonna add that to the to-do component. So in here, we're gonna import the to-do state. So import to-do state. So we're gonna basically do // interface, or interface is actually interface. There we go. That's fine. And then we're gonna define in here that it needs to conform to that. So object to do state, and the next part is in here in the constructor. This dot state is gonna be equal to, so there's gonna be, so if we hover over this dot state, it's gonna tell us that there are some properties that it expects and it's not finding it. So that's what we're gonna do right now, is we're gonna define the default state, which is gonna be for items. There's gonna be completed, which is an array, and I'll just add a default text here, build a modern to-do app, which is going to show up on the view for the completed array, or completed view. And then there's going to be in progress, a list of items there. Removed will also be a list of items there. For the default, I'll just add a couple. Workout for 30 minutes, so that when we land to the page, we'll have this listing for the in progress. So I'd like this to go to done or completed, and then the rest will just stay in the in progress, just so we can see it. So workout for 30 minutes at the gym, oops, comma, buy groceries, which is milk, vegetables, fruits, fish, closing parentheses, clean the house and backyard. Who doesn't want to do that? Take the car to the auto shop for an oil change. Cool. And then the next up, we're gonna add right outside of items. It's gonna be new item, which is gonna be an empty string, view, which is gonna be an object, open, it accepts open, which is the default we'll pass in is just boolean false, because we don't want it to be opened on load. And then selected is going to be the in progress view. Okay. So now that's done. The next part that we're going to do is we're going to go back to the new item component, and in here we're going to start working on the basic functionalities of this component. Okay, so now we're ready to work on the new item component, and to begin, we're just going to define a bunch of divs inside of the new item parent div. So we're going to do div class name equals new item dash create. within here, we're just going to be div class name equals new item dash create dash icon, and in here div class name equals new item dash create dash icon dash default. So that defines that's the state. That there's going to be default and there's going to be hover. Okay, hover and hovered. Yeah, there you go. So we're gonna add in here SVG icons or SVG code. So if we refer back to the Figma file, so right now this is actually the preview of the file, and what we need is the actual working file so we can see the code. And in here in my design, I added some states for the icon, just basically you know, so for the create item, what I'd like is, you know, the default is going to be solid, or just a border with the blue color and the plus sign as a default state. And then when you hover over it, it's gonna it's gonna look like this one, so the opposite color. So blue background color and then white icon, white plus sign. So to get the SVG, what we can do is in here we can just play with its properties. For the stroke, so we have the stroke here as blue, and then we can just select this one. So for this is actually the hover state, which we can actually already get the SVG from. So we can just right click it. So what I did was right click, copy paste, and copy as SVG, and then go back to the code. So that is the hovered state, and we can just paste that in here. We need to update some properties here so that it's recognized property by React, which is this stroke width. So we remove the dash and just replace it with the camel case naming, stroke, small case, and then capital W. And just look that there's no more properties that are with dashes. That's it. I think that's good. And then we can go back again. So we have the hovered. Now we can change this to we can remove that fill and make that white, like the default state. And then we have the plus sign. The plus sign is gonna be that color, which is that blue right there, 382 EB. Okay, so if you select them, select all of these paths that we created in Figma, copy paste, copy as SVG, and go back to the code, and then paste that here, and then just indent them just so they're organized. Again, change the stroke width, capital, and that should be it. So we have those in place. If we save it, and here we can import our new item. Oh, actually no, not into do. We need to define them all within the list component, because list component we're gonna import from to do. So because if we refer back to the design, what we'd like is to add the new item input field within the in progress list. So on load, on page load, that's gonna show up at the bottom of the in progress list. Because basically, yeah, this is the only view where you can create a new item. And then once you create a new item, you click the plus sign, it gets added to this list of in progress. And then from there, you can interact with the individual elements. You can either click the complete button or the remove button, and they go to their individual queue or list. So we're gonna add the create new item component to the in progress or the list component, which is what we're gonna do now. So here we're gonna do import new item from, we need to go back one directory up, / new item. And now we can add that in here, new item component, just close that there. And just so we'll know that it is within the list, save it. Now we can go back to the to-do component, and in here we can import our list from, so we need to go back one directory up, and we'd like the list there. List is going to be below the calendar, save that, and there are our buttons. So okay, so now what we need to do is we need to define our input field where we can enter text, and that's going to be right outside of the new create icon div right here. So in here we can do div class name equals new item dash input, and in here we're gonna define input, which is gonna have properties type equals text, placeholder equals create new item, of course. If we save that, there you go, there's our newly created input field. And we're gonna already define some other properties, which is what's gonna power this input field. So we're gonna define a ref, which is gonna be set new item input ref. So don't worry that it's not defined yet. We'll do that in a moment. On key up, so we need to capture on key up events. So when we're typing on the keyboard, when we let go of a key, this is gonna trigger that event. So on key up, handle new item input on key up, camel case. On change, handle new item input on change. And on blur, so on change is whenever we're typing something, it's gonna send that event, and on blur is whenever we're outside. So we're focused right now. When you click outside, that's gonna trigger the event for the on blur. So on blur is handle new item input on blur. Okay, so right now it's complaining that it cannot find these properties, or these are actually functions that we're going to be passing to the parent, because right now it's in the list. So we define the new item within the list component, and the list component is defined within the parent component to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to be passing all these functions up to list, and list up to do. So we're lifting up the state, because remember I mentioned that we'd like everything to be just handled by the parent to do component to make things cleaner and make a primary single source of truth. So that's what we're doing. Okay, so here we pass in those properties, so those methods. So handle new item input on change, let's make it alphabetical. Handle input new item on blur. Actually, yeah, we need to change this, to switch this to this one. BC comma, and then handle new item input on key up, so BCK, and lastly set new item input ref. And we need to define what they are, the shape of these things. So that's it's expected by Typescript. And we're gonna do is so each of these methods here, we're gonna paste them and define what they are. So they're gonna be function, which returns void. They're just pass-through functions. They don't really return anything. Void function that returns nothing, void. Okay. And now these the ref, these properties, when they're called, it passes an event parameter. So in here we can define event, which is going to be change event for the HTML input element, which is what this thing is. It's an HTML input element. So in here up the top we can import, let's just define them all. Change event, focus event, these are the events that we're going to be using, so Typescript knows what the shapes of these things are. Keyboard event, and they all come from React. So change event, with that is that one. Input on change. Oops, my bad. So this is actually for this one. Input on change is for this one. HTML input element. On blur is actually focus. So focus event. Okay, and then on key up is going to be keyboard event. HTML input element. And lastly, set new item input ref is going to be element, which is an HTML input element, or null. Okay, so oops, we saved it and we got an error. So type is missing the following properties from new item, which is okay. Yeah, so now that we saved these methods that we expect new item to have because of the input field, now list recognizes that, and now it's expecting that those properties to exist. So what we're going to do here is we're going to define them all individually. So handle new item input on change is going to be what we're going to be passing up here. I can just select what I did earlier, is I could just copy all these properties, all those parameters, and paste them all in here. And up at the top again, I need to define all these event types. So new item handle new item input on blur is going to be this one, input on blur. Copy this, paste. On change, paste, copy this. On key up, And lastly is set new item input ref. Okay, now if we save this, now to do complains that it also expects those from the list. So again, now we're going to define those individually. So list handle new item input on change is gonna be okay. So in here we're gonna define new method for the ones that new item expects. So for all of these, for these four. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna define first at the top, right below the super props. So we're gonna do this dot handle new item input on change equals this dot handle new item input on change dot bind this. So this is necessary in React for this to work, the actual this keyword, so that we prevent all these issues with context scoping, like because when we use this inside of like functions, sometimes it gets it loses its context. So it's best that we define the context, pass in this, which is an object, and get this to work. So this handle new item input on change, we're going to define that method, which is going to be above the render method. It's a method and it accepts an event, which is on change is going to be a change event. Again, we need to define these events up at the top, so we can just add those right about here. That's fine. Okay, so this is a change event for the HTML input element. Okay, and that is what this thing expects. So now we can do this because we did this binding. So now it knows what this is. It's not going to lose context and stuff. And then we also have handle new item input on key up. There's also on blur. Handle new item input on blur. And there is set new item input ref. Okay, so again, we're going to define these methods here. So we have on change on blur, this dot handle new item input on blur is equal to this dot handle new item input on blur dot bind it with this, and copy this, just paste that here and use that there. Handle new item input on blur is a focus event for the HTML input element. So now we can use that method to pass in here with this, and then handle new item input on key up. It's going to be this dot handle new item input on key up dot bind with this. Okay, now copy that method. On key up is going to be below here. Event is going to be a keyboard event for the HTML input element. And now we can pass that there and here. This and handle. Okay, and then set new item input on ref. So this we're doing this so that we can capture this DOM element input, which we're going to be using to get its input field information in the text within that that input field. So what we can do is we need to define here that name, that function name. So it's going to be this dot set new item input ref is equal to this dot set new item input ref dot bind it with this, and here we're gonna do set new item input on input ref is gonna be an element, which is from here. We said that it's an element, it's an HTML input element, else is null. HTML input element, else is null. Okay, and here we can pass that in there. All right, so now that we have all those in place, when we save it, so now Typescript is happy because now it sees all those methods that we're passing as parameters in here, and they're defined properly. Typescript knows what they are. You know, they're they pass when they're called through a callback, which we're passing up to two components up, the list and the to-do. We know that it passes an event, and we know Typescript knows that those events are of these different types: focus, change, keyboard. Okay, so now we're gonna work on defining the functionalities of these methods that we're passing. So we have four methods, and first up that we're going to work on is the set new item input ref, and this method is basically it has to do with the ref, which is we're capturing this input field outside of the usual controlled component that React does. If we go to the React ref documentation, so right here it says some information about why you need to use ref, or when to use refs, when there are cases managing focus, text selection. In our case, we're gonna do that because we're gonna set the value of that input field to blank after we add the new item to the in progress list. So, and we're doing the not the traditional approach of defining, the element this dot my ref, and then React, which is equal to React that create ref, and then pass that as that method. But instead we're doing the callback approach because we are exposing those DOM to the parent component, and we're defining our parent component to be to do. So this ref comes from the new item. We pass that up to the list, and list passes that up to do. So okay, so now let's start working on this set new item input ref method. So in here we do this dot new item input is equal to element, and this new item input is gonna be defined up here. This dot new item input is gonna be null at first, and Typescript needs to know what that is. New item input is an HTML input element or null. Okay, so we save that, and okay, so now that's good. Next, we're gonna work on our individual method. First up, we'll work on onChange first. Handle new item input onChange. So in here, we define constant, we the structure value, which we can pull from event.target. Remember, this method is passed up from new item, handle new item onChange, and onChange is a change event. So it expects a callback, and it passes that event as the parameter, and we can get the value from that target. So event.target.value. Now, the value we can use to this.setState new item value. So that's going to be this state property, new item. So whenever it changes, whenever we type in anything in that input field, we save that in the state within the new item key. Okay, next we work on handle new item input on blur. And here we can do constant new item will be equal to this.state, and then if there's no new item, just return. Just don't do anything. And in here we need to, so when we're typing something and then we click out, that's supposed to save that text to the in progress list, because on mobile, if you do that, if you type in, that's like the default experience. You're typing something from the input field and then you click away. That is supposed to register as a save. Compared to desktop, you type something in the input field, you need to press return. But it's common UI experience, that when you click away, you tap away, that is supposed to register as an event or save in this case. So when that happens, we're supposed to add the item, and what we can do is we can call a method that does this adding of new item for us, because we can also use that add new item for the handle new item input on key up method. So it's much better if we create its own function to prevent us from repeating our code. Okay, so in here we're going to do this dot add new item method. Again, this binding thing that we need to do so that this keyword will work. This add new item, which is going to be at the top here, is a method, right? And here it accepts new item object, and then there's a new item property in there, and that new item property is gonna be let's maybe just fix the spacing. New item is a string. Okay, all right, and then in here we're gonna do constant new item input from this. So remember the ref that we're passing up to list to do. Here we're capturing that from and we're setting it to this dot new item input that we define up here. So we're capturing that element and we're going to use that information here. So if there is no new item input, just return, just don't do anything. Otherwise, let's destructure completed, in progress, removed, equals to this.state.items. So right now we're just concerned about in progress, but we also would like to pass in, whatever, if there's already an existing items and removed and completed array in here and in here, we'd like that to be recorded every time this method is called. So in progress dot push new item, right? So when we add a new item, if there's new item input, if there's no value, or if it doesn't exist, let's not proceed. But otherwise, let's get the new item, what we're passing, the actual text that we're gonna pass, and then we're gonna save that to the states. This.setState items. So we need to again model this, which is defined in our interface. So it expects items, it expects new item and view. So items is going to be completed, in progress, removed, and outside of that, new item is going to be nothing, because we already added that to the in progress. So let's just clear that value, and outside we're gonna do new item input dot value equals to nothing. Okay, so we have the add new item method. Now we can call that in here, so we can do this dot add new item, and in here there's the new item that we'd like to pass as an object, and yep, that's the property, new item. So when we call this, so if there's no new item, don't do anything. If there is a new item, on blur you type in something, you click away or tap away, we pass whatever text we typed in there to the add new item method, and we save it to the state and then clear the input field. Now for the handle new item input on key up, in here we're basically going to be doing the same thing. New item equals this dot state constant. We're destructuring these values from event. Constant is enter key pressed is equal to if enter is what has been clicked from the keyboard, right? Yes, and then here in the condition, what we're going to do is if it's not a new item or it's not enter key, return, don't do anything. Otherwise, add the item, new item. Okay, there we go. Cool. So we're gonna for us to see if it's working or not, what we can do is we can destructure, or we can get the state items, right? And then we can do console.log those items. And here we can do, so I just open up my console or my developer window, and here dock to the bottom, so just so we can see the result. Let me open up a little bit. Okay, so refresh. So in the beginning there's it's just the default. You can see that let me just fix this so it looks much bigger and easier to read. So we have the completed array. When it loads, these are the default stuff. Completed, you have the in progress and removed. Removed, there's nothing. So now when we add something in here, so let's say to do, read a book, right? So every time I type something, you see it registered all those information. And we can't see what is in new item because right now we're just looking at the items, but we'd like to see what is inside of the new item, which is what we typed on, just so that we know that it's that's the value, new item. Or actually, you know what, we can just do solo log this.state so we can see everything. So on load, refreshed, and then now we can type HELLO. You can see that the new item is being populated. Now if I click away, it registered an event, and that should be, there you go, see? So it added it to the hello, it added it to the in progress array, right? That is when I clicked away and then it cleared the input field. How about if we do press enter? That should do the same thing because we have registered a callback, or we have registered an event handler for the onKeyUp event. So that should also work. So let's say hi there. Okay, so when we press enter, that's supposed to go into the in progress array. Enter. Okay, so I open this up, scroll down, items, and within the in progress, hi there. There we go. Cool. So we see that it is recording the new items that we have created, and it's saving it successfully to the state, which we're going to be using later for the list. We're going to use all these state information for the list. But for now, let's just remove this because we do know that it's working. And now we can just go back to the new item component and open up its style. And in here, we can start styling the new item, so it'll look much nicer. Okay. So first up, set the margin to 0, padding to 15 pixels, top right is 20 pixel, bottom is 5 pixel, left is 20 pixel, position is going to be relative, display is flex, direction is going to be row. And within here, we have the first up is new item. Next, child is create, new item dash create. So ampersand dash create. Within create, we have the icon, and we also have the icon default and the icon hovered to add in there. Okay, so we're gonna do create icon. We're gonna create ampersand dash icon. It's gonna have a padding of 0 and 5 pixels. Top, bottom is 0, left, right is 5 pixels. Cursor is gonna be pointer, and then the hover state for default, we're gonna, when we hover it, default is gonna be hidden, and when we hover the hovered state, we're gonna show it. And then, oops, forgot the colon, and dash hovered, display none. So on initially so when we save this, right, when we hover over, there you go. So on default, like the hovered SVG icon not displayed, but when we hover over the item, we show the hovered icon in view. So now sibling of icon is input, right? So we have icon, and then now we have input. So ampersand dash input is gonna be flex 210, padding dash left 20 pixel, and then the input is gonna have font size of 18 pixels. Color is gonna be hash 323232, a black color. Width is gonna be 100%. Border is gonna be none. Outline is gonna be none. Padding is gonna be 3 pixels. Top, bottom, left, right, 0. And then I think that's about it. We save this. There you go. Create new item. So we're gonna fix the other styling for this through the list, because in here let's do that right now. Basically what we're going to be doing is we're just going to define some of the views that we'd like to work on, which is so there's going to be 3 views, whereas we have the in progress view, we have the completed view, and we have the removed view. So let's just define the HTML for those. So it's going to be an ordered list. Its class name is going to be list dash in progress, and within that list is where the new item is going to live. Over here. Okay, and a sibling of the list in progress list is list completed, and another one is list dash removed. Okay, so just so it has basic structure.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out part 2 of how to build a modern to-do app using Figma, React, and TypeScript.